UVA or somewhere else that's a little bit different than the kinds of opportunities you get in the typical workforce. I've been a professor for 25 years. I have supervised, I don't know, 17 PhD students, I don't know, 40 something master's students, taught thousands of undergraduates and written letters for all these folks going out on the job market. So I have a lot of experience, and feel free to ask questions. I'm going to go through this slide deck because it kind of tries to address a lot of the issues up front. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the graduate programs here, but more broadly, grad school in general. So we have a couple different programs. We have 2 at the master's level, and then we have a PhD. Talk a little bit about why you might think about grad school as an option, and then something that that not a lot of, I guess most people don't realize when they first start thinking about grad school, is that depending on exactly your goals for grad school, the opportunity to get funded to go to grad school is actually there. It's very common at the PhD level, and as I'll explain, it's less common at the master's level. Then for UVA undergrads, we have what's referred to as the 5-year BS MS program, but it's 5-year is not really a I don't know why that terminology is used, but that terminology is on the website and it keeps getting propagated. But it doesn't necessarily have to be 5 years. It could be 4.5 years. It could be 5.5 years. It's more up to your program of study. Okay, so I was in your shoes at one time. I was a 3rd or 4th year undergrad, and I was thinking about what I might want to do after I graduated. And I had no clue that there was this opportunity to do, what I do now, which is basically, I'm a professor, and I spend most of my effort, believe it or not, on research. It's not on teaching, it's research and working with my graduate students. A completely different job than what you might imagine if you've encountered me in the classroom. So a lot of different reasons why you might think of directing yourself in down different paths. If you're an entrepreneurial person, you really want to start up a company. I absolutely have had students that I've worked with who are interested in that. I definitely have had students who are interested in teaching, primarily because they came from a family where someone was a teacher, and so this was something that was valued. Have a lot of people that got to the end of 4 years as an undergrad, and you tack that onto 12 years of prior schooling after 16 years. Yeah, it's a little bit, I want to go do something different. I did that. I went off and worked for 6 years before I went back to grad school. I wouldn't say I was sick of school, but I was looking forward to an opportunity to do something slightly different. So a lot of it's going to be personal. But I think one of the things to think about is, the extent to which you really like learning new stuff and the extent to which you like being an expert. One of the few people in, say, your organization that's the go-to person for a particular kind of problem solving or skill or technical ability. And, one of the things that you will see over the span of your career is that technologies come in vogue and they drop out of vogue. And the fact that you know how to program in JavaScript now, I sincerely hope is utterly irrelevant in the year 2030. And I hope that we're using some much better languages and frameworks for building systems. And so you kind of have to continually learn in this field. And if you can raise the level of your understanding sort of theoretically and conceptually, it's just going to make it that much easier for you to learn new things and sort of be a leader in your organization. So from a PhD perspective, if you're someone who really loves learning and you want to spend the rest of your life learning new stuff, that's like a great path. So this is the thing that I currently love about my job, is that it takes lifelong learning to the nth degree. So a master's degree is kind of somewhere between a bachelor's degree and a PhD. A bachelor's degree, barely, I apologize, all of you are bachelor's students right now. You're learning a lot, but you're barely scratching the surface of the field. Every single topic that you are learning about in a class goes incredibly deep, and you could spend your entire career studying just that one little topic. And so the landscape and the depth of material is beyond what you could possibly absorb in 4 years, much less 6 years. And trust me, in 25 years, you're not going to get there either. So a lot of the decision making will come down to personal choice and personal preference. One of the things we'll talk about is the sort of financial landscape of things. And so you do want to be realistic about your current financial situation and how you're managing, say, if you have any debt related to school. This is something to think about. Again, I'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a second. Okay, so we have a couple of different options at the master's level. We have something called the Master of Science and the Masters of Computer Science. The main difference between these is that one is a thesis research-based option, and the other is more like a completely course-based master's degree. The coursework is going to be similar to like a 4,000 level upper undergraduate course. But the difference is that it'll be probably a little bit more project oriented, and there'll be a little bit of a tighter interaction with faculty members. In the best of scenarios, there's a kind of a collaborative peer-like relationship that develops between grad students and faculty. Because of the nature of the program, there's just not as many requirements. There's just a few required courses and then the rest of it, you could specialize. So if you're interested in cybersecurity, go for it. If you're interested in machine learning, we got a zillion courses in that. If you're interested in cyber physical systems or Internet of Things, you could specialize in that. The MS, like I said, it involves some kind of research. Especially if you're writing a thesis, that will have to be a document that is a novel piece of research. It's possible for a master's student to get some funding. I am currently supporting 6 PhD students and 1 master's student. So I have a master's student that I'm currently funding. There are always MS students. The MCS students will generally just be taking courses, and they pay their own way. So this little plot on the lower right-hand corner is attempting to give you a kind of sense of the amplitude of work for MS or MCS relative to a bachelor's degree. I mean, a bachelor's degree is there's some oscillation. You come up to a project or a midterm, there's a little bit of work, but the amplitude is not as high. The amplitude is much higher for master's courses. When it comes to a project, the project is going to be much more substantial than you've encountered at the undergraduate level. So the PhD is a completely different ballgame. The master's degree, a lot of people think of it as sort of the new terminal degree for people studying computer science. If you really want to get a leg up on the competition, then go for a master's degree, and it'll open up some new opportunities for you that weren't there. A PhD is something very different and more specialized. The point of a PhD is to learn how to be an independent researcher, and your entire training is oriented towards that. It's not so much the classes that you take. In fact, the classes that you take are a very small portion of your training. Most of your training is apprenticing with a very experienced researcher. So someone like me, like all my PhD students, are apprenticing with me. And at the end of the day, the goal is that they are my peers. They are functioning independent researchers who go out into the world identify new problems that need to be solved, come up with new solutions, etc. Sort of the currency of research is published research results, and so a lot of effort goes into not only coming up with the research ideas, but communicating them effectively in writing papers. And so this can be very bursty in terms of the work when you're coming up on a deadline. To some people's surprise, in computer science, PhD students always get paid. So your tuition, your health insurance, and a stipend. And so we are currently, our starting salary for PhD students is $30K a year. And you will specialize. There's no such thing as a generalist at the PhD level. You can do that at the MCS level, and you definitely do that at the bachelor's level, but it's all about specialization. The way I sometimes describe it to people is, by the end of your PhD, you are among literally a dozen people on the planet that know your topic as well as you do, right? So it's that narrow and that much of a focus. So that's actually kind of cool because there's 7 billion people on the planet. All right, so some of the pros and cons. This is a lot of time you hear people talk about these kinds of issues. So right now, it turns out it's a pretty good time to be a bachelor's student in computer science. You can get a very high starting salary, definitely 80K. But if you're willing to relocate to, I'm not suggesting you should do this because the costs of living in the Bay Area are enormous. But you go to the Bay Area, you can definitely make 6 figures starting salary. You'll have to live with like 8 other people in a 2-bedroom apartment to do it, but to afford the rent, but it's possible. There are tons of job openings now, and you can move jobs pretty easily as long as you're keeping your skill set up to snuff. And it's possible for you to move up in a management track. Generally, it's like every other job. Someone tells you what to do. There's a project you're on, and you don't have a lot of control about the day-to-day work that you're doing. You're just doing what the project plan says. If you get in a bad situation, you could be bored, but then there are opportunities to move around quite a bit. Because your skills are not quite as sharply refined as someone who has a little bit more education, you're a little bit less job secure, but you can improve that by doing a great job and keeping up with the latest technologies. So like I said, I had a job for 6 years and I just had a bachelor's of science and it was great. I really loved it. I learned a ton. So like I said, sorry for all the other engineering disciplines and all the other disciplines on campus, but if you want a high starting salary, you should be a computer science major. And definitely UVA CS majors are above the average. Okay, so if you go for 2 more years or a year and a half more or a year more, if you're going straight from undergrad and you go this master's route, you can definitely get a higher starting salary. There are still lots of jobs. There's the potential, if you want to jump right into management, there's the potential of doing that. You'll still have a lot of mobility. And you'll have a little bit more control of day-to-day work. And it's relatively low cost in the sense of your time, right? So if you're talking about extending your time here at UVA for another year to get this degree in hand, then you're really just the opportunity cost is 1 year worth of salary. The thing about it is that at the master's level, you're still not going to be in charge. You're still going to be working for someone. It's likely that as you move up in these organizations, you're going to be taking on more management work, and that may or may not be that interesting to you. So in some organizations, if you have a master's degree, it's going to be expected that you have some of this interest or ability to manage other people. Now that really comes home at the PhD level. So if you get a PhD and you go into industry, your salary will be higher. The opportunity cost is higher because it'll take you 4 to 7 years to get the degree. So you can do the calculation and figure out whether it's going to pay off monetarily. The benefits are that you have a lot of control over your work. So typically, if you're a PhD in an organization, you'll be expected to come up with the new idea for the project or the solution or what have you. And so that's great. There's a lot of responsibility there, but there's a high degree of control. If you're interested in teaching or just doing pure research, then there's the opportunity to work at the university levels. And universities are hiring computer science PhDs very aggressively these days to keep up with interests in the field. I'm not going to say that bachelor's degree people and master's degree people don't work hard in industry. They absolutely do. I know I was one of them. But when you have a PhD, because it's because you're the one who's like driving the intellectual enterprise in your sub-organization, they can oftentimes it can be a lot of work. Now, hopefully, you're really doing something that you love, and so all that work is kind of enjoyable, let's say. It's definitely assumed that management skills, someone has management skills as a doctoral graduate, but ironically, there's zero training in management from the PhD. It's all technical, all research focused, as I said. And sometimes if you have a PhD and you just decide you want to do front-end web app development, it might be very hard to get a job because people would say, oh, you're way overqualified. So that can happen a little bit. All right, so a couple more things. So industry versus academia, there's really two very different cultures. I have many, many friends who have PhDs who are in industry. A lot of people I know work at Amazon Web Services in their security group. They do incredibly interesting, high impact work. So who works harder? It's very hard to say who works harder. We both work a lot, and we both feel like the work that we're doing is important and valuable. They get better stock options than I do, but I have more ownership. Like at the end of the day, I have to demonstrate the relevance of my research, but there's no, Jeff Bezos isn't sitting there saying, what are you doing to contribute to the bottom line this quarter? So you're not getting that kind of push. So I'm happy to, anyone who's interested in the professorial track, I'm happy to talk about that at length. But let me move on a little bit. Let me talk about funding. So there's really a couple different ways you can get funding. You can be what's called a teaching assistant or a research assistant. You can apply for fellowships, or you could be self-funded. So what's a teaching assistantship? You probably have encountered some TAs in your time here. A full-time graduate TA is allocated 20 hours of work each week, and the other time they spend on their research and of course on their classes and everything. And the department pays for tuition, health insurance, and a stipend, that 30K a year I described. Generally speaking, students start as a teaching assistantship, but then they attempt to get onto a research assistantship because again, the goal is for a PhD student that you want to do research. You want to spend all your time thinking about and doing research. And so the teaching activity is viewed generally as overhead that keeps you away from doing your research. So MCS students in our program almost never do TAs unless they're undergrads from our program who already have been maybe an undergrad TA, and then they might be able to get one of these positions. MS students sometimes get TAs, and PhD students in our program are required to do at least some TA work, and that's, I think, true across the country as well. Research assistantships are driven completely by professors. The professors go out and get grant money. So I have grant funding from the National Science Foundation and DARPA and the Army Research Lab and the Air Force Research Lab, and I use that to pay the salaries and all the costs of my 6 PhD students plus my master's student. So I'm looking for people who are interested in the kind of work I do and I think who have promise and potential. And so I'm going to invest in them to, both monetarily and then with my time to try to get them trained up. Here it says it in a little bit of I wouldn't use this phrasing. I've inherited these slides. So it says, do whatever the professor says. I mean, it's a mentorship activity. So the professors should only tell you to do something that's like in your best interest. If they're telling you to like go shopping for them, then that's not a good thing. Come and talk to me if that happens. So research assistantships are by far the norm for PhD students. There are some external fellowships. National Science Foundation has the GRFP, which is a highly selective and well-regarded one. It basically gives you your own money, and that money's portable with you to any university you want to go to, and it makes you pretty attractive because you're self-funded essentially, and you're going to focus on research. So a lot of advisors who are interested in you will say, oh yeah, sure, you can join my team. They're pretty rare. There are some internal fellowships that universities have. We give a couple of these every year that sort of add value on top of our base level of funding. Self-funded students pay their own way. We have a lot of MCS students that pay their own way. And it's, like I said, very common for the BS, MS 5-year program students to pay their own way. Summer internships are very typical in this model. And in fact, if you do a summer internship, you can make not quite as much money as you can during an entire year of being a TA, but you can make a big chunk of it. So that helps mitigate the self-funding issue. In our program here at UVA, there are no self-funded PhD students. It's not done. I know of other universities that occasionally do it, but it's almost unheard of. Okay, so yeah, someone did a little poll a couple of years ago. What are the expectations of funded students? You should be working 70 to 80 hours a week. So you might look at this and kind of your eyeballs go up, but I'll tell you, the last year of my PhD work, I definitely worked 90 hours a week. Now, the thing about it is my advisor wasn't telling me to work 90 hours a week. I was working 90 hours a week because I was trying to drive that last stretch and get my research done so that I could graduate and go off and be a professor. And the other thing is you are like the only person in the world that is expert at this topic. So there's this very, like if you're a driven, person who's really into creating new things, then this 70 to 80 hours a week can go by and not seem like too much. Okay, now I'm a little bit too apologetic for that. You shouldn't work that hard. Your goal should be to work significantly less than that. I don't work that hard anymore. Other people have stated expectations like you need to be in the office all the time. You need to, be here between the semesters and over the summer. That's very common. All my PhD students are here over the summer. I encourage them all to take vacations and all that kind of stuff. But so the general trend across here is there's a lot of work, but there's a local culture that you want to get embedded into. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. So especially at the PhD level, you want to be taking care of your health and kind of nurturing your social network so that you can be healthy throughout the course of it. Okay, so there's this really interesting relationship with an advisor that develops. I am close friends with every one of my former PhD students. I'm in contact with them quite frequently. Whenever they come around to the East Coast, they stay at my house. I'm the same with my advisor. So there are these lifelong relationships that you create. And one of the most important things is to sort of find a good match between advisor and advisee, which will, like I explained, eventually evolve to peers. I meet with every one of my PhD students at least once a week. More like 1.5 to 2.5 hours a week because we have group meetings as well. My role in these is to provide sort of high-level guidance and inspiration and cautionary tales and help direct and provide feedback on the ideas that are coming from the student. And the student's job is to drive the research, come up with the key problem, the technical, the innovative solutions, perform the experiments, do the initial data analysis, draft the paper, et cetera. And of course, it varies during the course of your studies. Early on, you're going to do less of that. Later, you're going to do almost all of it. All right, so what if you're interested in a PhD? The most important thing you can do is get involved in undergraduate research as early as you possibly can. It is the by far most important thing you can do. Distant second would be to take some graduate classes and do well in those. Maybe to TA a class. What's not very important is, I know it says, some people might blush at this, but getting good grades is not that important. I'll tell you right now, my undergraduate GPA was 2.76. That's my undergraduate GPA. And last year I was named an ACM fellow and I'm an IEEE fellow. Those are the highest honors that you can achieve in the field. So like a lot of students, when I was told to take courses I wasn't really that interested in, I just didn't even try. So if you look at my grades in my major, is way higher, but all the other ones I just didn't care about. So this is not an unusual profile. And so I'm not saying you should get bad grades, but what I'm saying is you should pick courses you're really interested in, even if it's going to cause you a little bit more work, because you'll just be more engaged and you'll learn more. Now, a little bit on mechanics, applying to grad school. So the reason you want to get connected up with research or maybe do a TA is you want to get a faculty member who really knows you and who can say something substantive. So you want someone who's going to be able to talk in detail about your abilities and your skills and your potential. This is not so important for master's level. So you absolutely don't want a letter of reference that says, yeah, I don't remember this person, but they got a good grade in my class, and so they must have been good. Or, yeah, this person was really nice person, and they worked with me last summer, and they were great to work with, really collegial. You don't want that either. You want someone who can say, Bobby was a very independent worker. They were given this particular problem, and they came up with these 3 alternative solutions. And then they analyzed those and came back and convinced us that this was the best way to go. And so in other words, you need to be engaged in a way so that people can really tell a story about your potential as a researcher. Because honestly, that is the key to getting admitted as a PhD student. You have to write a statement of purpose for both master's and PhD. You want to be as specific as you can about your interests in terms of research. If you've done something wrong in your track record, like my undergraduate GPA, just explain what it was. So I did that in mine, and apparently it didn't cause problems because I got accepted to, the grad schools I applied to. Different programs will have slight variations in their requirements and in the advice they give for students, but there's a real wealth of information and a kind of a student grapevine out there that you can tap into. If you think you want a PhD, apply for the PhD. Don't apply for the master's degree thinking that you'll later upgrade to the PhD. Go straight for the PhD. If you don't get the PhD, it's easier to drop down to the master's than upgrade. Typically, the PhD deadline is December 15th for the following fall admissions. Master's deadlines can vary a little bit. Ours opens on December 15th and closes on something like April 1st. But if you're a UVA undergrad, you can actually apply right now if you want to. Okay, so UVA specific information. Don't go here for your PhD. So I just told you that the PhD is wonderful and we have great faculty here, and we're our research program has grown 171% in the last 4 years. I mean, we got an amazing set of faculty hires. So you probably already have this sense that UVACS is on the rise, and it is, but you shouldn't go here for your PhD. And the reason you shouldn't go here for your PhD is because your goal is to be an independent researcher. You want to build a research network that's broad and connects across the discipline. So what you want to try to do is go to universities that are great in the topics you're interested in, and then just apply to all of the best ones that you can find and let them choose. And so if Stanford doesn't want you, but Caltech wants you, great, go to Caltech. If you down select too early and say, I really am limited by this geographic location, or this particular thing that I like about this place. I like surfing, so I have to be within 20 minutes of a beach. You can do that, but you're very much limiting the playing field. Now, having said that, I applied to exactly one university for my PhD, which is completely countermanding the advice I just gave you. But the reason I did is because 6 months before I went back to grad school, my son was born, and we could only afford to live in my wife's parents' basement, and they lived, in the same town as UMass Amherst, which happened to be the number 17 ranked computer science department. So that all worked out well. But yeah, do as I say, not as I do. Okay, but the UVA MS programs are great, and the 5-year terminology is bad nomenclature. You don't have to complete it in 5 years. A lot of people complete it in less than 5 years. And here's the key: if you're a UVA CS undergrad and you've taken a bunch of AP courses, which is very common, and you're kind of in your 4th year, and you realize you're going to have some slack in your schedule, then if you just take a couple of graduate courses, say that last semester, then you've now chipped away at the requirements for the MS such that you can finish it in that next year, and then you'll be done in 5 years. So that's like the standard model for how someone gets the 5-year BS MS. But some people stay around longer. Okay, so here's the basics. There are 4 required courses spanning a set of topic areas: computer systems, software systems, applications, and theory. And then you're going to be required to take about 18 other credits. If you're a new UVA undergrad, then the transfer credits doesn't matter. You're not transferring the credits into the graduate program. The most important thing is, if you take these graduate classes during your undergraduate years here, don't count them for your undergraduate degree. Just leave them, and they will automatically be included in your program of study for the graduate degree. A lot of MS programs around the country are pretty similar to ours, but some have a little bit of, some have more focus. So we actually have something called a cyber physical systems graduate program here as a master's program. It's not in CS, it spans multiple departments. It's very unique and very interesting, but it has kind of a special twist to it. Okay, so within our master's programs, there's 3 options. There's the all coursework option, which is where you take 10 3-credit courses. There's the project-based MCS, which is where you do 1 project course. It's like an independent study. And then you take 9 3-credit courses. And then there's the MS, where you take 2 what amount to independent studies, where you conduct your independent research, and then you have 8 courses that you take. So these programs are all pretty similar, but it may be different at other universities. I know it's different at other universities. I've worked at other universities. So here's kind of the basic model. You're in your 4th year. Like I said, you're running out of classes. You take 3 graduate classes, maybe 1 in the fall and 2 in the spring. Now you have 9 grad credits. You only need 21 left. That's 7 classes. You're a grad student that last year, and you take those 7 classes, 3 in one semester and 4 in another semester, and you're pretty much done. Now, you're a UVA undergrad, so you're used to saying, oh, I can definitely take 5 classes or 6 classes, or I had a friend who took 21 credits and he was fine. You will not be able to take 5 graduate classes in one semester. And here's the problem. Like I told you, the amplitude of these projects is a little bit higher. If you get a couple of your classes syncing up with those peaks, you simply don't have enough hours in the day. So like my students take 3 courses. That's it. I don't let them take any more than that. And I usually don't let them take, usually I want some of those courses to be like independent studies so they can focus on their research. But yeah, a 3-4 load like this would be perfectly reasonable. A 4-4 load, you could do it, but it'd be a pretty heavy workload. Okay, so I think these are last year's costs. So in-state tuition, surprisingly, is a little bit cheaper for a graduate than undergraduate, but you're getting a few less credits, I guess, because you can't take 16 or whatever. All right, so how do you apply? In the fall of your fourth year, if you're interested in doing this kind of 5-year BS/MS program, and you think you have some slack in your schedule and you can fit a couple grad courses in, then it's not too late. You can just apply right now. You don't have to take the GREs. So this year, GREs are waived because of COVID-19, but for UVA undergraduates, you never have to take a GRE to apply to our master's program. You also don't have to pay the application fee. That's waived. And we normally require 3 letters of reference, but you don't need 3. We only require 2. You need at least 1 from a CS faculty member, and ideally 2 from CS faculty members. We're going to be able to say, yeah, you're a good student and you'll be successful in the grad program. I think this is pretty much, yeah, that's it. So hopefully I didn't take too much time. Happy to answer questions.
Actually, we had a couple questions in the chat. One was when you were talking about the advisors and I guess the kind of relationship with the advisor that you'll have. The question is that more for PhD students than the master's level students?
Yeah, okay, sorry, I should have had chat open. So yeah, most of the main comments about, so the advisor relationship with when you're a PhD student is different. It's much tighter. You're working with this person very, you know, it takes 5 or 6 years to get your PhD, so you're working with them for a long time. And there's this kind of mentoring relationship. So the personalities have to get along and all that good stuff. At the master's level, if you're doing research with someone, it's less of an engagement. You're not working with them for as long. But definitely if you're doing research with someone, if you're doing an MS with a thesis, you will be meeting with them at least once a week. So my master's student, I meet with for 2 hours a week, once in group meetings, 2.5 hours a week. He's in 90 minutes worth of group meetings, a couple group meetings, and then I have an hour-long one-on-one meeting with them. So it'll vary with the professor that you work with, but yeah, it's more for a PhD than master's. Okay, so Joe had a question. Is not having started research until the 4th year an issue? Not for the master's programs. There's no requirement for master's admissions, but like I said, I think I said on the very first slide, I'm the chair of graduate admissions, and so it's nice if a master's applicant has some research background. That's great. It's essential if you're a PhD applicant. If you don't have some kind of research experience, then it's very difficult for us to judge your ability to be successful as a researcher. Senior capstone, the way we do it here in CS, could be a legitimate research experience. If you're doing one of these directed studies with a faculty member, that absolutely could be a legit research experience. Okay, okay, so Joe had a second question. If you were taking the GRE anyway, should you give UVA the scores regardless? I guess if you nailed it, you can, but it's completely optional. So yeah, if you get super high scores, why not? Let the world know. Let's see. Of the 3 types of masters, are any of them particularly more impressive for employers? Okay, I believe employers will not distinguish between them at all. The only way that they would is if you are, say, I could imagine a situation where, say, you wanted to work with my colleagues at Amazon Web Security, Web Services in their security group, and you did a master's thesis where your thesis was on a particular security-related thing. Then what they're going to see is, oh, this person really knows this stuff. But that's not really going to be a function of the type of the degree. It's going to be a function on the degree to which you specialized within your program of studies, if that makes sense. Feel free to follow up. What are the top things that master's admissions look for? So for Yeah, so interest, this is going to sound a little like a contradiction, but I probably have already contradicted myself 3 times. So what's a fourth? So I would say master's admissions probably does care a little bit more about undergraduate GPA, whereas PhD admissions, not so much. PhD admissions, you're looking for people uh, who seem like they have the sort of aptitude and the drive and the independence of thought to be successful as an independent researcher. For a master's level, one of the key criteria is, will this person be able to be successful in our classes? In other words, if we let them in our classes, are they going to be able to swim along with everyone else? And so if you've gone to a good undergraduate program and you got a pretty good GPA, then that's a pretty good sign that you might be successful. So yeah, master's admission, having a kind of a broad background. Again, if you're a UVA undergrad, we know exactly what you had to take, and so we know it's completely adequate for our graduate program. But most other master's programs, if you have a UVA undergrad in CS, this is going to be, yeah, you're well qualified, and they're going to look at something like your GPA to determine whether you've mastered the material. So if you're looking for a more specialized one, like say you wanted to go to CMU and get a master's in machine learning, well then in that case you should have taken some machine learning classes, at least a couple, as an undergrad to get in. Okay, so okay, I think I'm on to Gary. Gary, if you have one undergraduate course left for your 8th semester, is it feasible recommended to do 3 graduate courses with that one undergraduate course? I guess the question is, so the question I would ask is, what's the undergraduate course? If it's like golf or something, then maybe the answer is yes. But if you're going to take like OS, and then you're going to add 3 graduate courses, that's going to be a toughie. It's not essential that you take 3 graduate courses. If you can take 2 graduate courses that 8th semester, then you've taken the 10 courses down to 8, and now you can do 4 and 4. You could do 4 and 4 as a graduate student. I know people who have done that. Yeah. Is it problematic to get a letter of recommendation from an employer? It's not problematic, but the thing is, they generally won't be able to speak to your academic accomplishments. They won't be able to say, oh yeah, this person took 2150 and did great, or this person took OS and did great. And when you get letters from people who we know, they come pre-calibrated. Like, we know that the person who, this person is not going to overly embellish, and so it's just a little bit more of a known quantity. So if you've done some interesting stuff for an employer, absolutely get a letter from them, but try to supplement with some CS faculty. And it could be anyone, any of our faculty. Okay, so I believe I'm down to Jerome. For the MS program, does it make a difference if you are a UVA, BA, or BS? No, it doesn't make a difference. We love all of our undergrads. Let's see. Payal, does this process differ if you choose to work in industry and then come back to school? Great question. Yes. Okay. So a couple of flavors to this. So I did that. I worked for 3 years, just working, and then I went back and got my master's, starting part-time at night. That was like the toughest transition in my life, because I forgot what it was like to be a student. And that first semester was just, I couldn't even believe what students went through. And, studying all the time and all that kind of stuff, and taking tests, it seemed very stressful at the time. So there's a transition that you'll have to go through. But it's actually pretty common nowadays for people to do this, to take some courses in night school, kind of start to ramp up, and then you can switch over to a more full-time program, which is exactly what I did. I took a sabbatical leave from my work and finished my master's full-time. Then I worked for another 1.5 years, and then I went back and got my PhD. In terms of the, if you had a UVA undergrad who goes out and works and then wants to come back to UVA for a master's, if the answer is would we waive your GRE? Would we only require 2 letters and all that kind of stuff? The answer is yes. I know this because we did it last year. Okay, so then we get a few more came in. Okay, so I think I'm down to Tucker. If you take graduate courses at UVA, will they generally also transfer to other schools' master's programs? Yes. We accept 6 credits of transfer. So, and other universities may be different, but if you took 3 graduate courses elsewhere, you couldn't transfer all of them. You could transfer 2 of them. So for the master's. Can you apply to both the master's and the PhD program? I think technically you can. I've seen people do it, but we should have a conversation about why you want to do it. So again, like I said, they're focused on completely different things. And so if you really think you're interested in a PhD program, my suggestion is go for it. And because you can start the PhD program, and if you decide that it's not right, usually that decision will happen after a year or maybe 2, and then you've already accumulated enough credits to get a master's degree. So if you decide to leave early, you'll leave with a master's degree. So this is a kind of a standard model at a lot of places. But Joe, I'm happy to follow up if that's not if that's not directly answering what's behind your question. Okay, so now Jason has one. For the MS, how would one work towards TA to help with funding? If you're a UVA undergraduate and you are, so one possibility is that you could demonstrate by interacting with current faculty that you're a reliable, competent, knowledgeable person, maybe by being a TA, maybe by working with them in some way. Because oftentimes what happens is that for these TAs, we call them MTAs, Masters TAs, they get picked because they came from our undergraduate program and they're a known quantity. So one of our faculty says, "Oh, I need a TA," and hey, look, it's Jane. She's awesome. I know she'd do a great job. More broadly, if cost is a major concern, is going for the master's reasonable? I do think it gives you a leg up on certain kinds of jobs. So I know that there are research engineers like at Microsoft Research and I keep saying this Amazon group. So this Amazon group does hire people with master's degrees to implement the infrastructure that the researchers are developing. You will never get that job without with just a bachelor's degree, never ever. And so there's like a cost of entry for certain of these opportunities that will require this master's degree. So it's a little bit hard. I mean, I know cost is a big deal, and if you're already carrying some student debt, it's only going to get deeper if you're a pay your own way master's student. And so, okay, maybe I'll answer it from my personal perspective. Did I think it was worth it? For me, my master's degree was absolutely worth it. And the reason is because I was an undergraduate EE major, and I started working at a company that built embedded systems and compilers, and everyone around me knew more computer science than I did, and I really needed to catch up. And so one of the ways I did that was by studying a lot independently, taking some night courses, and then doing this master's degree. And that actually leapfrogged me over top of a bunch of my peers. And so if I had stayed in the industry, I would have been on a much better track by doing that master's. Okay, personal statements, Jerome, I'm answering now. Personal statements are required for both master's programs and PhD programs. The nature of the statements will be a little bit different. But if you're applying for the MS program, it's assumed that you're kind of interested in research. You should say something about the particular areas that were of interest to you. It could just be as much as I did I took an undergraduate course in cybersecurity. We did a project. I was really interested in this particular technology and I want to explore this further, something as simple as that. At the master's level, we want to hear something a little bit more about, why it is you want to study computer science, say more deeply. So what we're looking for generally there is, indicators that you're, an independent worker, that you're well motivated, and of course we can then get other information about whether you have the aptitude for it. Okay, so Aiden, if you are pursuing an MCS, can you still do grad TAing, but without the greater expectation of, you can, but here's what's going to happen. So it's one of the tricky bits about doing the grad TA stuff, the MTA. First off, they're pretty rare. In fact, the only people who ever get them are pretty much our undergrads, our own undergrads, because they're known quantities. But they require you to do 20 hours of work a week. So now you're trying to get through the master's program expeditiously, right? You took a couple grad courses that last semester. Now you want to take 4 and 4. Well, now you're taking 4 and 4, plus you're required to work 20 hours a week doing TA work. That's a big workload. And so there's a balance there and a trade-off. Now, if you could get that TA money and stretch your program of study out an additional semester, then you could drop those, 4 down to 3-2, and then maybe you're good, or whatever it is, 3-3-2. Then maybe you can make that work. If you apply, okay, so now I'm at Logan. If you apply for the master's right now, when would you be notified of acceptance? I can answer that question because I am the director of admissions. If you apply right now and you have all of your stuff ready, you need to send me an email, and we can go through. So let me back up. The real question is, when are you interested in starting the graduate program? Do you want to start the graduate program next fall? So in other words, you're going to finish your undergraduate through May, and then you're going to start in the fall? Or are you going to graduate in December and start the master's program in the spring? If you're going to do that, then we have to jump on your application process and review process very quickly. Otherwise you're going to apply in December. December 15th is when it opens. We really start considering the master's applicants around February. We try to make most of our offers by the second week of March, and that's pretty much when you would know. So that would be the normal timeline. Is it possible to go into teaching at a university or the master's? Actually, it is. But it's a slightly different role. So I'm a professor, and we have certain people who are in positions that are referred to as lecturers. Lecturers, we have 2 or 3 of them in the department. In fact, we just hired one. She was a UVA undergrad who went and got her master's degree at USC, and now she's come back and she's teaching here, Elizabeth Larico. She's awesome. She really loves teaching. She does a great job. And so, yeah, these opportunities are there. The thing about it is that you're expected to teach a lot. That's what you do for a living, you teach. So unlike my workload, which is 60% research, something like 30% teaching, and 10% service, if you're a lecturer, it's going to be like 90% teaching. So you're going to teach more. Presumably you like it, and so that's to your liking. There are the positions can be less permanent. So for example, for someone who's in one of these lecturer positions with a master's degree, you wouldn't get tenure. So tenure is this thing, if you've never heard of it before, it's this idea that faculty members after a certain period of time are granted sort of permanent employment by the university. So that's not available to lecturers. All right, so I'm happy to answer more questions if anyone, how many are accepted each year? So we aim, we aim last year to have 100 people matriculate for our master's program. Now, usually we have usually we have about we've been trying to ramp that up. So I think 2 years ago we had 60, and then we pushed that up to about 70, and then I think we're trying to get it up to 90. And so there's a yield thing, which just means that, if you, for every, X people you admit, then X divided by some number is how many will accept. And so we extend that many offers. But yeah, so at the master's, for master's students, we try to get 80 to 100 in every year. For PhD students, it varies, but we try to get 30 to 40 every year. So that's the size of our graduate program. Several hundred master's students and several hundred PhD students. Okay, sorry, Gary. By the way, I'm happy. If you have to, Dana, if you have to leave, it's okay. I don't mind answering more questions. My wife is still mowing the lawn, so I got a couple minutes. Okay, if you were applying to grad school this fall to start your graduate program next fall, is it possible to take graduate courses this coming spring? Absolutely, yeah, definitely. In fact, I did that. When I was an undergrad, I ran out of courses to take. I had 2 free electives, so I took graduate programming languages and probability theory. And of course, all my friends who were not nerds thought I was an idiot. They thought I should have taken frisbee golf and some other. I love frisbee golf, by the way, but I already knew how to play, so I didn't need to take a class. Yeah, absolutely. If you like this stuff, exploit the opportunity to learn more, because it will only be a structural advantage over the course of your career. Any other questions? Boy, I feel like I'm running for like office or something. This is a town hall meeting, and I'm just getting nailed with these questions.
It's a tough crowd.
Okay, I refuse to equate myself with any politician who's currently running for office. Okay, so you can take oh, I'm sorry, Gary. I apologize. I thought you said I was interpreting it as the spring. So now Aiden's question clarifies it for me, because I see the word summer and I now see it at just a quarter of an inch above it. We don't really have that many graduate courses in the summer. There are some universities that offer graduate courses in the summer. And for example, let's imagine that you were a Nova person, living in Nova. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I actually went to Annandale High School, and now I'm listening to see if anyone's hissing and booing, but no, apparently not. So say you're up there and you got a summer job, but you also want to take a course at George Mason. You can take a graduate course at George Mason, transfer it into UVA when you start up in the fall. We absolutely would allow that. So yeah, you can do that. It's just that we personally don't offer a lot of graduate courses in the summer. Summer recommendations for Seville natives. See if you can get engaged in research. If you can connect with a faculty member, sometime it depends, Gary, it depends on whether you're interested in an MS or an MCS. If you want to just go for the course route, then this wouldn't really help you. But if you're interested in either a project MCS or an MS with thesis, see if you can find a faculty member who's like doing stuff that you're interested in. You would start doing kind of volunteer research with them, and then what you might be able to do if you did a really good job, you got to demonstrate that you have the aptitude, that you're independent, so that when you say you're going to do something, you actually follow through on it, and you do what you said you would do. you demonstrate these kinds of qualities, then you can say, hey, maybe can I take an independent study with you next summer? Because the independent studies, they can go on during the summer for sure. So that's one possible route for picking up a couple of credits in the summer. Okay, so that's my CVille native recommendation. If you don't have a strong GPA, but have TA and research experience, how does that factor into the admissions process? Um, so for a master's, it might, so we do holistic review of applicants. So we try to look at everything. We try not to be super biased by any one factor. If we see that you have interesting research experience and you have this TA experience and there's letters from people that are saying good things about you, and your GPA is low, and in your personal statements you explain why your GPA is low, then it will get factored into the admissions process. There's no formula that we use to make these decisions. It's the best thing you can do is, if there's a weakness in your application, try to describe why it is, and that was a particular point in your life or whatever, and now you're operating slightly differently. Okay, I'm reading Nicholas. Are there any disadvantages to graduating a year early as a third year and applying for a master's? Yes. Okay, so now we probably have to get Dana to leave, because actually we have to stop recording is what we have to stop doing. Okay, so here's something that I've had this discussion with students many times. So if you're here as an undergrad at UVA, say you have some financial aid, right? That financial aid is going to carry you through your undergraduate program, but there's no such, that financial aid will not help you in your graduate program. So if you had financial aid, what you want to do is run your undergraduate program as long as you can, so that you can leverage that financial aid and then fit in the graduate courses along the way. That way, your financial aid will pay for those graduate credits. And then when you transition over in that last year to the graduate program, now you're ahead of the game. If you stop early and just take fully undergraduate courses up to you graduate, then when you transition over to the graduate program, your financial aid is gone. So that may not be exactly the situation you're talking about, but that is a scenario that I've discussed with a number of students. So yeah, stay in undergrad as long as you can, I guess is what I'm saying. Although if financial aid is not in question, then go back and look at the tuition costs, because actually the graduate tuition is slightly cheaper. So you have to navigate that one a little bit based on your personal circumstances. Okay, I think I'm on to Tucker now. How often do you accept students with other engineering majors, say BME, to a CS minor, with a CS minor? So we require that all students coming into our program have a breadth of coursework in computer science, and that means you should have some course in computer systems, whether it's programming languages, operating systems, something systemsy, database, some kind of software development course like advanced software development, or a software engineering course, some kind of CS theory course. So any CS theory course, could be theory, computation, algorithms, something like that, and then some kind of computer architecture, organization, some kind of course like that. So if you have the minor, you probably ticked a bunch of those boxes already. But if you don't, then you'll want to tick one of those boxes. If you want the specifics, it's on the Grad program description, or you can just send me an email. Okay, apparently I did answer Tommy's question. Oh, sorry, that was a private message. I shouldn't read those.
I think that's all that I see in the chat.
Yeah. All right. Well, you can always send me an email if you think of something later. You will not find me on social media. It's not that I'm not social. It's just that I know how social media systems are programmed.
That's
I give all my data away to Google for free. I don't want to give it to anyone else.
That's another lecture for another day.
Actually, I use DuckDuckGo is what I use.
Oh.
If you don't know what DuckDuckGo is, yeah, find out. All right. Well, thanks for all the thanks. And
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I learned a ton too. We will
all
make
right, great.
a better counselor too. This was great.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Right.
All right. Great.
That was fantastic. Loved it.
Oh,
Lots
good.
of questions. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we did get a lot of questions. That's good.
Yeah, that was excellent. All right. Well, I learned a ton just for myself. So
All right. Good.
very helpful for me too. And
All right.
we'll
Well,
maybe talk later about doing something in the spring for the first and second years to get them kind of.
yeah, it might even be fun to engage a couple different faculty, because we have some faculty who are amazingly prolific in the extent to which they incorporate undergrads in their research program.
Yeah.
So maybe hearing about how that happens, and like what is the means by which the students become exposed to and connected with the faculty member, that might be a good way to get at it. So.
Oh yeah, I think that would be great, because we get a lot of questions from students about how to get connected with research, and yeah, that could be terrific.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Well,
Thank you so much. This was great. And
all right. Have a good evening.
you too. See you later.